In this video, we're going to cover multi-track routing from your MPC into your DAW software. In the previous video, we finished our mix and now we're ready to separate those into individual tracks in our DAW to finish mixing the record. Now the nice part about doing this as opposed to finishing your record inside the MPC is it gives you access to further refine the sounds, whether it's through editing the waveforms directly, or whether it's just improved use of third-party plugins, or even studio outboard hardware, or even a console. So at this point, I like to think of your DAW, no matter which DAW it is, sort of like a tape machine. In the old days, you would have had racks of MIDI implemented software synths, and then those would have, with your MPC, gone to the studio, set up a 24 or 16 track tape machine, and you would have recorded down all your sounds, later to be laid with vocals and mixed through a console and made sound as best it can possibly sound. So at this point, let's pull up the MPC as a plugin now. Now, since it's being used as a plugin and not as a standalone application, our file menu is now located here. So you have a couple options. We can load recent, where it shows us the last sequence we had open in the standalone application, or we can use the browser and we can browse to it. Once we're done loading, let's get back into song mode. And then the cool part about this integration is, from now on, in song mode, we're linked up with the bar count timeline in your DAW. So what you can do is actually go in and drop markers on this timeline, and they will coordinate with the sequences of your song. This is actually doubly useful because once you have your markers in place, you could highlight a section on the timeline in your DAW, and it will actually loop in the song mode based on the bar count. Since this is all just MIDI data, the MPC knows exactly what to do. So at this point, you could actually leave everything you have going, loop a section, and then work on a new track down here. To make sure that this goes smoothly, I recommend turning your automatic delay compensation off, and then just run this as a bare bones track. For this reason, I have the master bus turned off, because I don't want to induce any extra latency in this process. I want the groove and the timing of what I have in the MPC to precisely lay down against the timing inside my DAW. All we'd have to do is make a new audio track. We'll name it Mix Down, and set the output to an empty bus, match it on the input, record enable, monitor input, hit enter, and record. But let's say that you don't want to do that. You actually want to take the time to go through assigning the multiple outputs. Now we would need a lot more tracks. So let's just shoot the moon and we'll make, let's say, 25 stereo tracks. Well, there's a cool feature in Pro Tools that allows me to cascade the inputs. Notice we only have bus 3 and 4 up to 31 and 32. As stereo outputs, this gives us 16 stereo pairs if you include bus 1 and 2 as the output of the MPC instrument channel. If you're on a different DAW, you may have to assign these by hand. But for the most part, all you got to know is use an individual output and set them up in a cascaded fashion. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on, all the way to the bottom. Ideally, you'll have one audio track per program or track in your sequence. So one for kick, one for snare, one for hi-hat, one for bass, and each one of the elements should live on its own channel. Now, some people think you should take off all your EQ and all your effects. My personal opinion on this is, if the element you've added, an EQ, a compressor, a delay, a reverb, if this is an integral part of the sound of the particular instrument, synth, drum sound, or anything else you may have sampled, then keep it. If it's not integral and it's a temporary device you put in just so that you could get a little flavor, then put that effect into a mute state, such as the reverb I added inside the MPC, and add it later on in your mix. From here, we're going to need to go in track by track and assign the outputs to correspond with the tracks we created inside our DAW. So the first place to go, of course, would be the track mixer. Now we're going to go track by track, sequence by sequence, and we're going to assign all of the outputs located right here and then name the audio track inside your DAW to match. This can take a little while, but it's definitely worth the effort. The method that I like to use is to use the solo function track by track so that you only hear what's going on, and then use the show pads with events only function in the program mixer. Now I'm going to go offline and do the work, but when I come back, you're going to see that it took 2 passes to record everything because we're limited by the 16 total stereo tracks we can record at once. So because I had over that, it took 2 passes. Now you can see that I have everything recorded as audio, and I'm ready to start my final mixing. At this point, I think it's time to record our vocals. So in the next video, I'll show you what we came up with.